United USA got a red flag. Of course, this concerns the jab and mandates coming, and that
America's Healthcare Workers for Medical Freedom, that's the organization which organizes protests in California, and Heather told us that many of the participants were actually frontline health workers during the pandemic. Here's what she said. We're not anti-vaccine, we're anti-mandate. We have worked the whole entire year and a half, and now they want to fire us if we don't get the vaccine. So we truly believe that's wrong, and we should have the choice. The same nurse further stressed that if these compulsory measures are in fact enforced and the hospital decides to fire their staff members, that will have a negative effect on the level of patient care. Here's what she said. I believe that it's the wrong decision because it puts patients at risk. The quality of care will go down if they fire tons of staff in the hospital. So we're all doing this together because we don't agree with it. Another nurse that we interviewed over at this protest, she expressed a similar viewpoint. Here's what she said. Now, I'm feeling like our freedom is getting stripped away from us, not just because I'm a nurse, but also I'm an American citizen and I believe in freedom, and most of all, freedom of choice. Now, we also spoke with a woman named Jay, who works in the emergency room inside of a medical center over in California, and she told us that, in her opinion, the government policies regarding vaccination have been politicized in the name of safety. But she says it's not all for safety. Here's specifically what she said. It is a forced policy. We are American. This is a free country. We don't live in a socialist country, a communist country. It is just slowly taking freedoms away. And if this was mandated, what's next? She further stressed that healthcare workers are educated professionals and therefore they should be allowed to make their own choices. Now, furthermore, one of the organizers told us that so far they have held 7 rallies across California. And given the fact that the vaccine mandate is coming up soon, by September 30th, that goes into full effect, we can likely expect to see more such rallies popping up all over the entire state over the course of it. Made by a consultancy firm, some companies are starting to consider deducting $50 from the paychecks of unvaccinated employees. Here's specifically what a partner over at Mercer, which is a health benefits consultancy group, here's what he said in an interview with Forbes magazine. Employers have tried encouraging employees to get vaccinated through offering incentives like paid time off and cash. But with the Delta variant driving up infections and hospitalizations throughout the country, at the same time that vaccination rates have stalled, we have received inquiries from at least 20 employers over the past few weeks who are giving consideration to adding health coverage surcharges to the unvaccinated as a way to drive up vaccination rates in their workforce. Now, let me just reiterate what he said. According to that statement, there are employers in this country which are starting to consider deducting money from the paychecks of their unvaccinated employees. Now, to give you some background on this, up until now, different companies in this country have offered gift cards, days off from work, cash, as well as other financial incentives in order to convince their employees to get the shot. That was you can call it the carrot approach. However, now some companies are turning to the stick. According to that interview, these companies are considering tacking on a $50 per month charge to their unvaccinated employees, which is actually similar to what some companies already charge their employees who smoke cigarettes. Their reasoning, according to that article at least, is that COVID-19 can lead to serious illness and an expensive hospital stay that cause the worker and company paid insurance, triggering premium increases as well. Now, while some companies are planning to tax the unvaccinated, others are just not going to be letting them in the building. These are companies like Google, Facebook, and Walmart, and it was just recently announced that America's largest employer will also take this approach as well. Now, I'm of course talking about the U.S. military. That's right, 2 days ago, the Secretary of Defense came out and he said that he will require all active duty members of the military to get the vaccine. In a memo that he sent to all Pentagon employees, Lloyd Austin, who is the defense secretary, he said that the requirement will be coming up in the next few days, and here's specifically what he said in that memo. I want you to know that I will seek the president's approval to make the vaccines mandatory no later than mid-September or immediately upon the FDA's licensure, whichever comes first. Now, what he's referring to there, in case you're not aware, is the fact that the COVID vaccines, whether you're talking about the Moderna, the Pfizer, or the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they are all currently under what's known as emergency use authorization by the FDA, meaning that even though they have been tested, they are currently not fully authorized. And that is, by the way, the exact reason why, up until now, military personnel were able to decline the shot. Because at the moment, since the vaccine is labeled under emergency use authorization, that means that it's voluntary. Soldiers cannot be mandated to take it like other vaccines. However, that is exactly what Lloyd Austin is trying to change. He's seeking to get a waiver from the president in order to make these vaccines mandatory. Here's what he said. The intervening few weeks will be spent preparing for this transition. I have every confidence that service leadership and your commanders will implement this new vaccination program with professionalism, skill, and compassion. We will have more to say about this as implementation plans are fully developed. And based on public statements, it looks like Joe Biden is in fact on board. In fact, here's what he said in this regard. Being vaccinated will enable our service members to stay healthy, to better protect their families, and to ensure that our force is ready to operate anywhere in the world. Now,
all right. Let's stop that right there for a moment. So, for those of you who have been following my channel since March of 2020, for those of you that are new, I don't know who you've been listening to or what news you've been listening to, but if you're on my channel, it's probably because you're a truther and you're interested in Facts Matter to you. This is from Facts Matter YouTube channel. Shout out to Roman. You said this just as good, if not better, than I could have said it. So that's the reason why I wanted to share this with all of you, is because vaccine mandates, I think most of us that have been paying attention have been seeing this since last year, a year and a half now. As soon as all this started, I knew this was going to be the natural progression of what was going to happen, just because when you've been paying attention like I have since the towers went down, I saw clearly part of Agenda 21 was a whole plethora of initiatives between then and up to 2030 and beyond. And Agenda 21 is also known as Agenda 2030. So this is part of New World Order. The vaccinations, are they what you think they are? That's something you're going to have to decide for yourself. For me personally, I want to share this information because I want to show people that I've been right about this all along. And I said that, show us your papers please, vaccination cards, vaccine mandates. Here in Arizona, they said they're not going to do it. They're not going to require vaccine passports. But there's already businesses that are requiring you to get vaccinated to work there. And so you can see the progression of corporations starting to implement and do the government's work kind of for them, essentially. The two are kind of working one in the same, one hand washes the other, so to speak. And so this is a prime example of the fact that they're ready to drop the hammer, and we are the nails, ladies and gentlemen. And so you're going to look back in a year from now and look back last summer and say, oh my goodness, just look at the progression of where we are now from where we were last year. And then just use common sense and look at where we'll be a year from now, and a year after that, and a year after that. You see the escalation and the progression and evolution of progressism, that progressive kind of left-wing liberal ideology that ultimately is really more masquerading as liberal or leftist democratic ideology. But really what we're seeing is the reflection of more Marxist, socialist, and communist ideologies being implemented by corporate America and also by our government on a federal and city and statewide level. It's very, very concerning. If it's not concerning to you, then go back to sleep and stick your head back in the sand. But for most people who genuinely care about the future of this nation and the future of this world and democracy in general, freedom of rights, civil liberties, if they do create a vaccine mandate, wouldn't that, let me propose a question. Wouldn't that be a violation of the 13th Amendment that says nor slavery nor involuntary servitude? So involuntary servitude would consist of being told to do something against your will, right? Would that classify as a violation of the 13th Amendment? Is it unconstitutional? Is it illegal? Let's listen up to the rest of this. Check this out.
Now, the big question, the one that you might be asking yourself, is whether this is actually legal. And according to a letter which was sent to Lloyd Austin from 60 members of the House, they say it's not. Here's what part of that letter said. The law of the United States is clear. mandatory vaccination is illegal for military personnel prior to complete approval. As long as the vaccine is authorized under an emergency use authorization, the Department of Defense does not have the authority to implement such an order. Service members who do not wish to receive the vaccine cannot be required until the approval process is completed. Any action to require it is illegal. The Secretary of Defense is not above the law.